Welcome to Mothman-Multimedia's first original video, and what better way to do it than to review Halloween Horror Nights 31 at Universal Studios in Orlando. This review is limited to the haunted houses, but stay tuned for additional videos, including scare zones, a survival guide, and bonus content. There are 10 houses this year identified from A to J on the map. Since this is Halloween Horror Nights 31, each of the houses will have nods to the number 31. Let's get started. Spirits of the Coven is a play on words, with the theme being it's a 1920 speakeasy run by a coven of witches. These witches are luring men to either kill them or make them servants while making their witches brew to help them take over the area. The house opens in a packing district or Dock 31 as you're on your way to the speakeasy. The bar is serving drinks with body parts, and you meet one of the first eye candy flapper witches. You'll pass a piano and into the gambling room with another flapper witch. There's a head on the roulette wheel with an eye as the ball. Next, in the private lounges where you see a bathtub full of body parts and hear a witch snacking on a patron, you'll notice the witches do get more hag like throughout the house. As we move into the bottling area, the witches turn into full hag witches, then into the barreling area. The final room has a few more victims on the walls, but here is where we meet the Queen Witch taking center stage. It was a very original concept. I like the throwback aspect of the 1920s, but for me, it lacked a good scare or two. So overall, I gave this house a B minus. Welcome to Block 31 at Hell Block Horror, where the premises is that it's a maximum security prison used to contain many different types of hellish creatures. There are five categories of creatures as you walk through the cell blocks: fiends, beasts, aliens, vampires, and zombies. Unfortunately, these creatures have escaped, killing many of the guards, with the surviving guards urging you to get to the core and detonate the power core. You'll see some dead guards throughout the house, with some scares behind fences and through bars. Ultimately, you get to the core that you've been hearing about and detonating it. This by far was my least favorite of the houses. Just had a feeling of being thrown together using previous concepts, masks, makeups in a prison setting. I'm giving this one a D. If it's more than a 20-minute wait, just skip it. And even then, it's probably too long of a wait. Halloween follows the 1978 John Carpenter movie and starts with the intro piano music playing as we enter the Myers house into Judith's room with her laying dead and a quick jump scare from young Michael. We go into a black room where the classic Halloween music and opening credit is shown, then onto the outside of the sanitarium where there are a few scare actors mixed amongst the static figures on the other side of the fence. We see the Boogeyman mobile to our right as well as the Dr. Loomis character. Then out to the Myers house with possibly one of the best scares of the homes this year, but I won't ruin that for you. We get between the sheets to enter the house as the Bob character is being killed by Michael up against the wall, then having Linda strangled and a scare actor from a ghost Michael. We end up in the living room with Laurie Strode shouting. Then walking through, you see Michael on the stairs and come to a room of many static Michaels with one or two real ones mixed in. Finally, you walk through the closet scene between Laurie and Michael, with one on each side of the wall, and the house closes with a silhouette of Dr. Loomis shooting Michael. I gave this house an A. Just a great representation of the Halloween movie with more than a few scares. A must if you're for any Halloween fan. Fiesta de Chupacabras has us visiting a Latin American village celebrating the Chupacabra. Unfortunately, this is a blood or sangre sacrifice, so you'll see that theme throughout the house. You're greeted with festive music by the mask maker urging you to go inside the village. Shortly afterwards, you encounter some of the victims and feel the presence of the Chupacabras through the growling and shadows. There's a great use of victim human and animal props throughout the house, and probably some less welcoming villagers all wearing different masks to represent their professions. You enter the plaza, where there's another shadow of a chupacabra, and see the mask maker again, along with another villager. The best room of the house is the Butcher Hermanos or Butcher Brothers shop, where there are several victims strung up to drain their blood. You will encounter two animatronic chupacabras throughout the house that have a similar feel from American Werewolf in London from a few years ago. While the house has some great rooms and great props, there weren't too many good scares for me, and I feel there was something missing. Maybe it was the masked villagers, so I gave it a C plus. Dead Man's Pier, Winter's Wake, is based on its scare zone from 2016, Dead Man's Wharf, using the same sign. It opens to violin playing in a New England fishing town where a ship, the Annabelle Lee and her crew, were lost at sea, having returned with a vengeance. This immediately immerses you in the town with the statue of the captain's widow front and center. As you enter the bar, you'll meet the one-eyed captain that has a nice photoluminescent effect on his beard. You move between alleys and boathouses where you'll meet two deep sea divers that again have luminescent face paint. This is one of my favorite scare actor makeups this year. Here's a similar photo used from 2016. Lastly, we get to see the Annabelle leave from the outside with the widow on top, who screams intermittently. It's hard to tell, but likely the same boat used from 2016. We then go into the ship with some more scares and finally conclude as if we're being drugged under the water with muffled sound of violin, seaweed, and a harnessed scare actor. I gave this house an A plus. This was my favorite this year, possibly a top 10 of all time. Just amazing from the opening with the lighthouse to the ship. There isn't a huge amount of scares, but the deep sea divers and Captain's Widow make up for it. You can't miss this one and do it twice if you can. The Horrors of Blumhouse's double feature with 2020's slasher comedy Freaky and 2022 summer hit The Black Phone. Freaky starts with the mansion scene, and we see the ancient dagger Ladola used to transfer the souls of the Blissfield Butcher with Millie, the lead character. We see the first of many props of character deaths from the movie, including Ginny impaled with the spear and Isaac with the broken bottle. There's a few scares from the Butcher along the way. We pass through the high school hallways and see another victim in the cryo chamber, followed by Millie in her stylish red leather jacket giving Mr. Bernardi the table saw. We then move to the homecoming party, where one of the scare actors is playing a dead jock. Finally, Freaky ends with another silhouette and shouting to kill that MFer. You enter the black phone portion of the house by walking past missing posters of the children. You're greeted by the grabber with black balloons outside of his van, asking if you want to see a magic trick. And the next room takes us to the infamous basement with the bed, phone, and eggs with just a little bit of salt. There's only one quick scare by one of the grabber's more angry victims, Pinball Vance Hopper. We move into the kitchen next, where the grabber is waiting for us to play Naughty Boy. As we try to escape, we hear the grabber's dog, Samson, barking loudly. Then back to the basement with a figure of the grabber's brother Max and the grabber saying, "You made me kill my brother." The house closes with the lead character Finney choking the grabber from behind with the phone cord. I feel there was a missed opportunity here to use the line, "It's for you." Overall, I was underwhelmed by this house due to lack of scares and missed potential, especially with the black phone, so I gave this a C plus. Bugs, Eaten Alive is set in the 1950s, where there was a strong influence of the creature features of that era, along with a Jetsons like sense of the future. In this case, a fictional company called Buzzcom has a product called Exterminary that not only heats and cools, but also kills bugs by accelerating their life cycle, also making them bigger. So, what could go wrong? We enter the Exterminator showroom, where a scare actor is modeling Exterminator when it starts smoking and alarming. We then walk through the Exterminator showrooms and labs with 50 styles living rooms, kitchens, and bedrooms. Each has their own scares and props. There's a few animated spiders slamming against windows and other effects meant to feel like bugs are on us. You continue to move through the model house and through utility rooms where there's assigned to scare actors being attacked by bugs. Then up to the attic, which is the spider room. There's some prop victims, but one of the better victims of Halloween Horror Nights is a scare actor wearing a fake stomach full of spider eggs. And it wouldn't be complete without a large spider enclosing. As we get to exiting, we see the showroom model again, wielding an axe and some battle damage to her face. Lastly, into the final room, walking under an even larger spider with the victim hanging from the ceiling, and you may get a little bit wet. I gave this house a B minus. It was a fun and bit over the top as intended. So unless you have an insect related phobia, there weren't too many scares. Descendants of Destruction is a post apocalyptic house set in the subways of New York City. Think Mad Max meets the Big Apple. Here, the air becomes contaminated and residents are forced underground to survive. As we enter the subway system, there are a few scares, including a scare actor in a ghillie suit. We then make our way through a subway car that is now someone's home and also to a scare that got me. The car is really well done. Off to the subway platform, where there's what appears to be a full size subway train derailed, which is created through use of mirrors to create the effect. Just really well done again. We then enter another room for some good old fashioned home cooking. Unfortunately, it's human meats. As we get deeper into the tunnels, they become caves and the inhabitants become more mutated as they adjust to the environment with some good uses of light reactive paint. I gave Descendants a B. The subway cars were really well done and a solid scare or two, but nothing major to write home about. The Weekend opens with him strapped to a type of an electric chair, surrounded by TVs and other electronics, then goes into a club where he walks behind a woman slitting her throat. You later see a silhouette of the Weekend being beheaded by a woman with an axe. In the next room, nurses are performing operations on him and later encounter several different versions of morphed and mutated Weekends. You go through a mirror maze. There's also a subway car that hits you with a loud horn and lights. There's one of the better scares in the house with what I'd call the wallpaper guy. You then come back to the electric chair, and the Weekend has escaped. One of the best parts of the Weekend is about a half dozen bloody Weekends in white suits. I gave this house an A minus. I did not know what to expect, but it was visually well done and added a different element with the music. If I was more familiar with the Weekend, I probably would have given this a higher score. Last but certainly not least is Universal Monsters Legends Collide, where it's the Wolfman versus Dracula versus the Mummy. Honestly, I thought the concept was terrible, but I couldn't have been more wrong. In this, the Wolfman, Larry Talbot, gets a letter from the Count to retrieve an amulet from Karis from the mummy's hand. If the Wolfman wins, his curse is cured. If Dracula wins, he can walk in daylight. And if the mummy wins, well, he just really protects the amulet. The house opens with an outdoor Egyptian excavation site with a large statue of Anubis, god of death, usually depicted as a canine or man with a canine head. So this was a great tie into the Wolfman. We enter a room with an Egyptian priest calling Karis to rise. As you walk through the house, you'll continue to see Egyptian artifacts and mummies in the walls. Most of the scares at this point are either Wolfman or Mummy or victims. The scares are largely limited to the Wolfman and Mummy, but it later opens up to having them in battle. You see a silhouette of the battle, and a panel on the wall opens showing the first of the two losers, which are either the Mummy or Dracula. The final room is at sunrise, with the winner rotating each night and is either the Wolfman holding Dracula's head or the Mummy or Dracula holding the Wolfman's head. This house was an A for me overall. What turned out to be a good story and one of the best scares of Halloween Horror Nights 31. There's a part towards the end where it's just rapid succession of scares, and being around people that scare easily just put it over the top. Well, that concludes all 10 houses. I gave Dead Man's Pier, Winter's Wake, the top spot with an A plus, with A's for both Halloween and Universal Monsters Legends Collide, and an A minus for the weekend, rounding out the top tier. Middle of the pack are Descendants of Destruction and Spirits of the Coven, with B's, and Bugs Eaten Alive with a B minus. No pun intended. The bottom three are Fiesta de Chupacabras and Horrors of Blumhouse with C pluses, and coming in last, Hellblock Horror. If you made it this far, thank you for watching Mothman Multimedia's first original content. I'd like to hear what you think, so please subscribe and leave comments. Stay tuned for more Mothman Multimedia, including Halloween Horror Night Scare Zones, a survival guide, and bonus content. Thanks again.